This is my 1979 VB V8 Holden Commodore. We saved this one from rotting away, got it running and driving, but this time on back shed, she's going back on the road. Stick around and take a look. So this is my 1979 VB V8 Commodore. I've done 2 previous episodes on this, and in those we got it to run. Added some new parts. Moment of truth, did I order the right U-bolts? It really wasn't a choice, it was just one U-bolt. Alright, so we got the right U-bolts. Or have we? They're not long enough. Finally got some brakes, and yep, went everywhere. So that line's fine. Stripped the interior, and it drives pretty good now. But this episode, it's all about wheels, stance, and all the fiddly little stuff that needs to be addressed to get registration legally here in New South Wales. So these wheels, I chucked them on because I wasn't going to spend a lot of money on wheels, not knowing if this thing was going to run or not. So they're just what I had laying around the shed. I like these type of wheels, they are my favourite wheel, but I want to go to more of a street car wheel, something that was a little more period correct, and lower the thing down. As you see, these guys, I can't lower it down any further. Because you see here, if I try and lower him down, this lip is going to clearly hit on the top of that tyre. I like these wheels, but I want to come down with this ride height a fair bit. So that's the first and the main reason I want to change wheels. But I mentioned in the last episode, what do you reckon I should put on it? What would you like to see? What sort of wheel would be somewhat period correct? And a lot of comments were saying Simmons's. Simmons's iconic wheel back in the day. And I do think they'd really suit this car. So I started looking around, and these are what I found. These are a Simmons F90. Nope. These are a copy of a Simmons F90. I got on Marketplace and just scoured it to see if I could get a cheap wheel. These resemble a Simmons, so they're good enough for me. These are quite a big rim. They're an 18-inch. They're a 255/40 tyre on them, and the fronts are a little smaller. But I wanted to do a little bit of work on them first. When I first got them, the clear coat around the edging was all peeling. And this is what we're trying to get rid of here. I'm not sure whether that's clear coated or what, but you can see all that pitting and those weird little corrosion marks. That's what we're trying to get rid of. So I machined them perfectly, the redneck way. So can you just pop your foot on the brake? I'll just get a chamois. Oh, a little bit more. So I started with a 320, and I've gone down to, this is a 1500, and the sponge is just to put some water on. That's a wet and dry paper. Right, you want to slow him down? Oh. Okay, brake. That's her. Yep. Mint. Redneckery complete. You see the difference there? I could probably go a little bit finer, but that's pretty much ready for metal polish, I think. You can still see a few of the scratches. I can go finer there, try and get rid of them, but better than it was. And I think if this car was painted, leaving them bright silver or maybe even going gold. That was another popular colour for Simmons's. Would probably be the way to go. But the way it is, Ratty, I just want to dull this down a bit, change the colour to maybe a darker grey or something like that in the centre, and that's where we're going to start. We're going to paint these wheels. I've already milled the edge. Let's stop talking and get into it. And I've got them laid out. We'll get them masked and Scotch Brighted down. I've actually already Scotch Brighted those three. Before I Scotch Bright this last one, I want to spray out a colour and just make sure. I want to go a shade or two darker grey without going almost looking black. So I'm going to spray something out and just hold it next to it, see if we can get a decent comparison first, and then mask up the center cap, mask up around the wheel edge, you know, to the best of my ability, roughly. And while I've got the fronts out, they are a, where is it, 235 40 18, so it's a 255 on the rear, 235 on the front. And like I say, I don't want to go too dark. I just want to dull them down a little, maybe even a semi-gloss finish. And I've just got some grey that was from, I think, my Ranger when I had a canopy put on, and I've just added a bit of silver, but we'll spray it out and see how we go. So I've just used paint that I've had laying around. I'll just spray them out on a little test panel and we'll see what we come up with. See if it's dark enough. Better not get any overspray in the valve or put any scratches on the valve. But I'll just let that dry, give it a second coat so it's covered. Actually, I'll show you what I mean. So why I say let it dry, give it another coat, make sure it's covered. If you look at it there, you think that's covered, but when you put it in the sun, so you can see straight through it, so you can see this, the marks there, it's still transparent. So base coat doesn't take long to dry. Chuck another coat on. Still quite bright that way, but it's going to be a lot darker that way. I think that'll do me. It's good enough for me. I'll Scotch Bright that one. We'll mask up the centers, rough mask around the valves and that, and we'll get into it. And the simplest way I can show you to mask up centers like that, so you're not trying to follow that edge, is I've just got two pieces of tape and overlapped them, and a nice new razor blade, stick it down in the gap and then just cut around the edge. The gap, like if you just see there, and then just come around the edge. So I was shaking like a leaf, but I got around it. Then just peel him off. The sides around here can be a bit more difficult, but I'm only going to rough mask around the edge there because I intend on machining them again. I say machining, but it's really only spinning it on the back of the car and holding a piece of sandpaper on it. But I want to go finer with that. If you can see, there's still a few fine scratches. So if I don't perfectly mask along that edge, it's going to be okay because I'll stick the sandpaper on it. It's going to sand it back to a perfect line anyway. And so I've just run some tape roughly around the perimeter, and I haven't forgot to Scotch Bright it. I'm going to Scotch Bright it now. Just a maroon Scotch Bright. There's different grades, there's grey, maroon. You don't need to sand a stable base, as I call it, or decent paint back to aluminium or whatever. You've only got to take the shine off it, and literally that's all it takes. If you can see that patch there, that's all that has to happen. Word of advice, do the hard to get to bits first. If you do the easy bits, you'll either one, miss the hard to get to bits. Wish that chainsaw would shut the hell up. Was just about to talk again, chainsaw started again. So I'll just do the hard to get to bits while the chainsaw's going. Around the studs is the worst bit, going around each one, you're on. Just literally put it over the stud, give it a twist, move on to the next. Wish the chainsaw would move on to the next. When you start your painting, I'd probably say the similar thing to sanding. Do the hardest to get at bits first, get them out of the way. We know how many coats it's going to take. It's only going to take 2 because we sprayed it out on the test panel and I was watching for coverage. It's a dark colour, it's over a similar colour. You don't need a lot of paint. The problem with adding a lot of paint is you're increasing the chance of peeling. The wetter you put it on, the more chance you are of peeling. If you're putting on nice and light and just dusting them in, the adhesion will be better rather than dumping it on wet. And also, if there's any chance of contaminants that you haven't got off, say in around the wheel holes, believe it or not, if you dust it on dry, they can actually not react, like silicone. Tyre shine's obviously going to be one here. If you have concerns about that, you can actually just lightly dust it on and bury that silicone. Trust me, it won't last forever, but it works. I can see my paper being an absolute prick here. This is what you get for trying to rough it out. Problems. Do it properly. Not like here. Oh, that looks way more professional. So that being acrylic lacquer, that won't take long to dry, especially in this heat, and that'll probably give you time to start looking at how much we want to lower this car and whether we can trim springs or whether we've got to go a new spring. And I guess we'll work through the differences of that. Basically, if you want to trim a spring to lower it, you can get away with it, but if you're going to really hack at them to really lower the car, you really need to be going up in the spring rate, which is a heavier, tighter coil. I don't know, I'll see how much we want to take out of this. The first thing we're going to do is check that it's symmetrical right around the car and we've got the right gap. I think we've got a bit of a problem with shocks, which I've already ordered some shocks. Because take a look at this. The way I'm going to figure out if we're sitting right, obviously, is measure the guard to the ground and the tyre to the guard and see, are we sitting the same? I can tell you already, it's leaning to the driver's side, but it wasn't. I only noticed it after the last time we come off the hoist, so I know we've got a buggered shock here, but is that what's doing it? And which end? Is it front or back? So we can work that out, but for now we'll just start measuring. I'll get some tape. And yes, I really need to be putting on the other tyres first to see how far we come down, but we'll get a guide if we're sitting square first. So that's 50 mil. I've got a bad memory, that's all I'm saying. Oh, it's 20 mil difference. Just say you parked on something here, the weight picks that corner up. It actually transfers weight to the back far corner, so this one could be squatting because this one's shock is extended, or vice versa. This could be a compressed shock will make that one higher. But let's check out. That's 35 mil. I don't know, I might have to, I'll chuck these wheels on in a second when they're dry. I might not even change the front. We come down, we start having clearance issues, and I can already see the edge of that guard being grabbed by a tyre. Not this one, but if I come down too low, you run into issues with steering. Okay, the plot thickens. The whole car's leaning that way. I'll jack the front up and that'll tell me if it's the back. If the back still stays cockeyed, it's probably the back. It's a little harder to do that with the back because if your jack isn't sitting under the diff perfectly, but we'll try it anyway. We'll see if these measurements change by jacking the front up, drop it down, jack the back up. Maybe we can sort of pinpoint which. It's not generally one side unless the driver was, you know, big, like Neanderthal type of mountain man big for a long time. Anyway, we'll see. So I jacked the front suspension up, and a reason being, if it's one of these coils that's sad or a shock that's sad, transferring weight to the back or taking weight off one of the corners, it should have leveled out, but it actually leant over harder. I've got that jack dead center. It should have lifted equally. It's now lifting even harder to this side. It's closed that gap up and it's widened the other gap. Now if it was just the weight shifting back, they'd both close up, but it hasn't. That one's closed up and that one's now even taller. So something's going on back there. I'm going to disconnect those shocks and just see what that does. See if one of these shocks is absolutely crapped out. Now of course none of those measurements have any bearing whatsoever to our new wheels. Just want to find out what's going on. I guess now we know what's going on. We're just going to whack them on and guess at it, but it'll give me an idea. One, I need to order some shocks tonight for the front because I already have the back. Righto. I'll get the front one on. We'll just see what's going on, see if we can't have a guess at this. And like I say, I'm going to guess if we fix that shock in the front, that'll pick that up slightly, maybe some new springs, and that will actually push the car back to this corner. If it drops 10 mil, that'll raise 10 mil. I'm going to work off 50 mils, so I'm going to knock the wheel back off and try and measure with the spring compressed how much coil I'd have to take off to lower it 50 mil. And then if I need a new spring. So essentially it's pretty hard to get a tape measure up to the spring, right? So I make myself a little cardboard template just with every 10 mil marked and then a highlight on my 50 mils. And the springs are still compressed because the whole weight of the car's on it, right? Well, you know, because I've jacked up the diff. From the bottom of the springs, it's probably only 1.5 coils. It's still pretty, it's a fair bit. If that was the front, I'd say get new coils for sure, but I might have a crack at the back. So again, all I'm doing, so the weight's on the spring, so it's still compressed. I'm sitting that's the actual saddle that the spring's sitting in. You can actually see the end of the spring there. I'm sitting that basically down into that saddle there, and then where that mark is on that coil, technically should be where you cut 50, and that should drop you 50 mils of compressed spring. However, we'll talk about the rest out from under the car. So going up on the hoist, but that's not a good sign. That's fuel. I'd say the old fuel pump has just said enough. But that's really quite common because the diaphragm in that old fuel pump is probably hardened from sitting for so long. and then you fire it up and it starts pumping. It's pumping fine, but it's so hard and brittle that it splits quite quickly. And when you think we haven't driven that much at all, so that doesn't shock me. Anyway, we'll just swap it out. Actually, I'll show you why it's such a small issue in my head. See, every time I've been pulling a factory fuel pump off a car, and that guy was off the Statesman, well, instead of throwing them away, I had them rebuilt. Just like I had a few carburetors rebuilt, this one included. And that was off the 202, factory, brand new rebuild. So I've been doing them in preparation for exactly this moment, just to make things quicker. So now I don't have to order a fuel pump. I got one here. Well done, Michael. I've got to tell you, I do love these wheels, but the other ones are really growing on me. I think it's a good choice to go to more of a street wheel, and they were everywhere on this sort of model back in the day. Especially I'll get the name wrong, but was it the V5, the mesh type of ones? I think that's what they were called. Very popular wheel. In gold too, a lot of gold ones. First thing we're going to do is knock this shock off here, and also up inside the boot there. Take that guy off and see if we can drop all of this down enough to remove that spring. Although I think in this guy the sway bar is probably going to be the issue here. Actually, that rubber looks like it needs replacing too. But we'll get a little list together this afternoon of what does and doesn't need replacing. But as I said, I've already got rear shocks because I knew they were shagged. Let's get this guy out. And shocks are pretty easy. They got a flat section at the top there. Just grab some vice grips or a shifter or something like that, and then just undo him. Is that the same size? It's not, you stupid. And I can feel there's a bit of tension on the shock, so the diff obviously wants to go lower. But I'm just going to let it. It'll let me know when it's undone. It can't hurt anything. The control arms have it. In hindsight, I probably could have done these when it was on the ground. That's just the shock going, dropping down. Would have to be close. Look at the length of that spring now. So I'm wondering if I just leave at the top there. It might just be stuck at the top just a little. And I'll knock this guy off here, rip that shock out. But, oh, do you reckon they're any good? They're still good. Not. They're shagged. I'm just going to try and wiggle the top of that spring a bit. It's still got tension on it, but just bugger all. I wonder if I can get that a little bit more with that sway bar. That's what I need, just a fraction more. I said with the shocks it didn't matter if they popped out because nothing would get hurt, but I'm not feeling the same way about undoing that sway bar. Just to support the diff, take a bit of the weight, and then I'll undo that pesky bolt. Alright. Didn't go too far, but there's a little bit of weight on it still. Actually, that rubber's alright. It's fine. It's just like one edge of it. It's almost like it's got paint flaking off it, not rubber. Oh well. Take my jack away now and see what happens. Oh, nothing. I'll get those springs out though. Oh, that is scary. Well, there's a curveball I didn't expect. They're thinner at the top. I'll ignore it. Clearly, I've never lowered a VB Commodore. I've never lowered a Commodore before. It's too new for me normally. So this is where my marking the coil comes into play. Ignore that guy. That was me struggling for space and accidentally hit the inside of the coil. It's on the outside. And that is a full one. It's 1.5 coils. But we'll start there, see where we're at, and if we have to go lower, I'll just order springs. Now, there's always going to be that one guy that says you shouldn't cut springs, but you'll never convince me. Back in the day, before adjustable suspension was an aftermarket thing, even if you bought new springs, the chance of it being exactly the perfect ride height, it's pretty slim. So you can't tell me that they weren't adjusted in this fashion. And anyone from back in the day, you've done it. You know you have. Well, I can tell you, that's made a difference. I might be rolling these guards, I think. Because that's a big gap. Don't panic. I overthought the shit out of the, went to cut the springs, backed it off, came forward more, ended up in the middle. Took 1.5 coils like I said, but let's not panic just yet. Get them in. It's one of those things. I'm apprehensive to see if I just messed that up, but somewhat excited. Even if I messed it up and it's too low, we can order springs, we can put up with it. I'm just going to bung the wheels on it, drop it down, get an idea if it's close, then we'll start on the front. I want to paint underneath before we go back together, so I'll get the other wheel. Oh, keep going. That's off the hoist. Do we go further, or do we leave it at that? I reckon that is maybe 8 to 10 mil from the top of the tread, because that's where I was measuring everything from. And is it level? Is the other side the same? No. It's not quite. That one's still got a little gap, but it's smaller than this one, so we've still got something going on up the front, I'd say. Well, of course we have. I haven't fixed anything. I think I want to go a fraction lower. No, decision's made. I'm actually going to start on the front and just leave the back. Although there's still a gap left to right, and I worked out that I think it's the front right that's the problem. It'd be stupid to have another go at the back until I fix the front. So let's fix the front. So we're going to pull the strut out. Well, kinda. You guys that like your special tools and doing things the textbook way, brace yourself, because it's going to get really ugly. We're going to do it my way, and that is leave all of this in here, undo the sway bar, the top of the strut, compress the spring, and just pull it out. It'll be ugly, but it'll work. Undoing the top of the strut's probably the easiest bit. It's just the 3 bolts. 1, well, nuts really, not bolts, nuts. They're just threads in the top of a hat, so to speak. Just knock them off. And that'll allow that strut to start to pull down. Then as I said, we'll just compress that spring with my favourite tool, spring compressor. Nope, not my favourite. Least favourite actually. And knock this sway bar bolt off. Because as I said, it sort of holds the control arm up when I need it to drop right away. So we'll knock it off. Oh, how long is it? Seriously? Oh my god. It's another one of those engineering feats where the engineers and modern cars all sitting around laughing their nuts out. Righto, spring compressors. So this is where the redneckery starts. I've got the spring compressors on, so one on that side, one on that side, and I'm just going to hit it with the rattle gun and just compress the spring, but that won't actually get it compressed. Just nip up both sides, a little bit at a time. And as I say, this will actually probably pull the spring out of the saddle. It won't compress the shock, right? So this spring will probably lift that way, to be honest, which isn't ideal, but I'll show you how to do the rest in a minute. Well, I'll show you probably how not to do it, but anyway, I'll show you how I do it. Jeez, I might get this one. No longer get the rattle gun under that one, it's come down so far it wants to hit on the caliper. See how the springs now kind of loose? I can just get it down and further away. Alright, here's the final touch. That's right, a ratchet strap. I'm going to go over the top of the strut tower between the bolts so it can't slide off left or right. Like that. I'm going to put my ratchet right at the top. I'm going to come down here, and before you all freak out and go, it'll slip off. I won't. As you go back through your shit there, your strap. And then back up. And back up to your ratchet. I told you, I'm going to be pretty. And this will compress the shock because now the spring is compressed, but the shock's still holding the hat up into the tower. And this will shorten the shock up. Told you, not pretty. Now I'm pretty sure this is where they say the the special tools start because there's a more or less a flat blade screwdriver cut in the top of that shock, but you can't get the screwdriver to it unless you've got a specific. If you wanted to get tricky, cut off an old socket, weld a bar to the end of it, hold that and get your screwdriver. I don't do it. I get some vice grips, get onto the shaft, because let's face it, you're throwing them away. Although if you get high enough, even on a new set, really jam it, you won't damage the shaft because they're fairly hardened steel. Even if you did, if it's high enough, the seal will never travel there. But anyway, that's a problem for another day. And no, the spring won't come rushing out because the compressors are still on. But there's the nut. Oh, creak. I just got myself. There's your spring pad, saddle, whatever you want to call it. I did put them on tight, so I can't release them. And there's your spring. Now, I know it's a specific tool again, although this one's different. Being different, we'll work that out later. Which one was the shot one? I would have said it was that one, but this one's leaking like a sieve too. That's going to be easier to undo than the other one. The other one was one of those, I'll show you. The head on this one is one of those ones you do sort of need a specific tool to, but really you just get a flat blade screwdriver and hit it and try and undo it with a flat blade screwdriver. Eventually it comes undone. That one's just a massive bolt head sort of thing, like get a big shifter on it. So we'll do that. Nope, don't have a shifter big enough. So what we're going to do is just clean it off. Well, not really, just so I can see the edges. Heat it up. And hope and pray oh jeez, nearly touched it, didn't touch it. I went to, stopped, not hot. If you know what I'm talking about, you've been here before. Probably not that hot anyway. No, it's not that hot. Okay, it's a little bit hot. This was the good one too, apparently. Oh yeah. Oh Jesus. Okay, I don't even know what I'm looking at here. Yeah, this one's been replaced. This one's an old Munro. I don't think they cleaned out the old cylinder very well. It's covered in oil. Probably its own oil, really. And all I'll do to soak up that oil that's leaked out is just get one of these jiggers, poke an old pair of socks or something down in there, and then tomorrow an old work shirt I've chucked in there, and just pull her out. So just to try and get the oil out. But this is what I was saying in one of the other episodes, and I've probably said it many times, is sometimes these old things were parked because the repair was more expensive than the car was worth. That just proves it. Who these days puts one new shock, you have the shock fail, who puts one in? Anyway, that had one new shock in it, and it was the better one, because if you remember, this is the side that had 60mm. Again, I write it because I have a shit memory. That side was had 40mm gap, or 30mm. Might have been 30mm. 35mm. Jesus, I'm all around it, but not at it. So that could be the difference of that blown shock on that side. Maybe a factory shock. This was an aftermarket Munro shock. So we'll get some shocks ordered tonight. Try and get up front sorted. I can still cut those springs. Let's do that. I'm going to stay pretty conservative on these front springs because if anything, I'd like a little gap at the front. I know that makes it sort of rake to the back, but I just don't want front wheel clearance issues to the guard. I'm not worried about the guard as such. I'm worried about ripping up new tyres more so, and actually wanting to drive it. If it's really low, they look great sitting still, but it does make it really hard to drive. So I'm going to stick with, I reckon, half a coil. Still pretty apprehensive about those front springs. It's like you cut a little bit off them because they're kind of flattish on that top coil. Didn't make much difference. Took a full coil off. Seems to make a lot of difference, but if I lose sleep over tonight, I'll just order a set of coils 2 inches lower. Anyway, it doesn't matter though. I've got a fuel pump we can do tomorrow. The exhaust, all those booger welds, I'll clean that up. Paint underneath is another thing I want to do while it's on the hoist, especially while the suspensions droop so I can get in everywhere. Oh, just start checking lights and stuff. This isn't about will it run. This thing we know it runs. It's still got one little lifter that ticks every time it's cold, but we haven't put a lot of Ks on this. We've really only run it out the airstrip in the last episode, so it'll come good. Give it an oil change or two and a few heat cycles, it'll come good. But then indicators, headlights, just the little things, wipers. Oh, remind me to get wiper blades tomorrow when I order shocks and coils. Clearly I'm erring towards ordering coils because I just said I'm ordering coils, but they might be fine. As I said, if you're trimming, cutting's fine. Trimming for ride height, let's call it that. Trimming for ride height, it's fine. If you're lowering the son of a bitch, if you're trying to lower it down, like, just get new coils. The spring rate is going to be all wrong. Even 50 mil, that's why I'm apprehensive. That's quite a drop. So maybe I'm not trimming, maybe I am lowering. 50 mil is a fair way. Am I ordering coils or not? I guess I'll figure that out. But anyway, that might do us for today, and I'll see you in the morning. We'll get some more done. So this morning my decision on springs was made incredibly easy for me. I rang up to order shocks and can't get them overnight. Didn't have them in stock. It's not going to be an overnight thing, so if I'm going to wait, I may as well order springs as well. So I've ordered some 50 mil, well they're listed as 40 to 50 mil lowered. I think that'll do me. That'll leave, I had 60 mil on one side. I know it was lopsided, but if I end up with a 10 mil gap, I'll be pretty happy with that. So 50-ish mil springs and shocks are on their way, but we can get on with everything else. So I'm going to start by writing myself a little list of what we can get into. We can do everything else other than fit springs. So paint underneath, just with a mild rust inhibitor. I've pressure cleaned underneath this thing probably 3 or 4 times now. So that's enough prep for me. I'm just going to hit it. Wiring, check indicators, lights, bulbs, fuel pump. Oh, here's one. Don't forget to remove the rags out of the struts before we put the shocks in, because it'll be a couple of days, so I'll forget. When those shocks have failed, they've obviously leaked all the oil out of the shock, and of course it stays inside the strut. So that's why we're mopping up the oil inside the strut. Oh, boot floor. In the boot floor where we took the tow bar, I'm going to have to put some grommets in the holes, because they're quite big holes. They're about 10 mil holes. So I'll put some 10 mil grommets in it, and then we'll probably stone guard the floor of the boot. Oh, battery clamp or another battery. This has got an odd clamp that holds to the bottom of the battery, doesn't go over the battery. So we'll have a look at that as well. We'll either get another battery, the right battery, or I'll just buy a clamp. That's probably all I can think of right now, but that's enough. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items. Let's just do one at a time. Let's cross one thing off at a time. First thing's paint underneath. Let's get it up and get it black. And with it back up on the hoist, it just became glaringly obvious what I forgot to add to the list, and that's all these booger welds. I'm going to grind them all down, find out exactly where it's leaking from, because the exhaust has had a bit of a hard time from a forklift from what I can tell. And there, we'll grind all this down, clean it up, see what I've got to do with it. Maybe try and bring it down away from that handbrake cable as well would be a great idea. So we'll see what we can do with this pump. It's actually leaking from that pressed join, I guess you'd call it. There's two pieces being pressed together and it's leaking from up above the fittings. It's not actually a fitting leaking, it's running out of there. I actually ran the car whilst on the hoist for my exhaust, and I'll show you up close. And my exhaust patch, it's not going to win any awards. It's just another piece of exhaust cut to patch over the hole and then weld it in. The top weld was pretty hard to get to, so literally I was welding it, running the car, seeing if there's a leak, welding it, and just keep going along like that. While I was running the car to get that amazingness sorted out, you could actually see the fuel running down this edge, and then once it was running down off that join, the fan was blowing the fuel back. So it looks like it's just a hose there, but it's actually that joint above, so we'll knock this guy off. I guess what I'm saying about the underside of it, 50 years and it's barely surface rusty underneath. That little bit of rust inhibitor we just put on there, it probably will outlast me. It'll probably look good long after I'm gone. And let's face it, the roughest years of this car's life were probably when it was worth nothing. These days they'll get treated better than they ever would. So that's good enough for me, that really is. And I can see me wearing an armpit full of fuel, and if you've ever had that before, you know how special that is. You haven't lived till you've had an armpit full of fuel. Anyhow, enough rubbing it on. Let's get this done. So I'm going to real quick jam that hose off. And now the fuel is going to siphon everywhere. That's not big enough. Luckily I brought a backup plan. Get in there. And got it at the elbow. Woohoo! No armpit full of fuel for me today. Not today, plenty of other days though. Alright, let's get this back one off. And I don't know if this would be a genuine pump. If somebody asked me, I would have said no. All genuine pumps are rebuildable, means they bolt apart. This one is not, and I'll show you in a second when I get it out. This definitely isn't rebuildable. It's a sealed, pressed together unit. So you guys that are clued up on that, you tell me. I'd love to heat that, but you know what happens if you're heating leaking fuel. It goes boom. I can see this ending really bad. Skin knuckles. Actually, I'm going to try a different spanner. I think I got it. I either got it or I stripped it. No, I got it. Here comes the fuel. Touch wood, this will only run out from the fuel line at the carby back. So it's not like you're going to siphon the tank. Oh, there's still a chance to get it in your armpit. So that's him. And what I mean by non-serviceable, there's no bolt holes around here. That's literally just pressed and crimped together. And the diaphragm's in there. And clearly, it's perforated and leaking out around there. Anyhow, I'll knock the fitting out, pop it in the new one, chuck it back on and move on. The battery clamp will be an easy one to knock over. I stole the battery out of the F100 because I wasn't sure if this thing was going to run. And there's the clamp there. I'll get this battery out and show you better, but it's just a different style of battery that this one needs. If you see, he's got the clamp as part of the tray. And so the battery needs a bit of a lip here. Like that one there. See the lip there? But I didn't want to buy a new battery until it earned the right to show me it needed a new battery. I was just being a major tight ass. I didn't want to go and buy a new battery until I actually figured out if the motor was any good. So I just stole it from the F100. Speaking of the F100, it's back soon, and some new cars you haven't seen too. Got a couple of new ones coming up. This is the old ratchet hammer. Beautiful. Another one down. So as far as lights, we've got no brake lights whatsoever. We've got no number plate light and no left-hand parker and a dull right blinker. That's in the back. Up front we're going pretty good. They all work except for the left-hand parker. It doesn't work. So we'll start in the back. Let's see what we can find here. So I'll start pulling a couple of these bulbs out. And they're pretty easy to get to on these fellas. That's if you can see what you're doing. And they just pull out. Well, there's one pretty obvious issue. Okay, curveball. I don't have any, but we had no brake lights on this side. I'll pull this one that worked. This parker worked. And it shocks me that it worked because it's equally as bad. But I know it worked, so I'll try it in this side. Let's see if it's a globe. That parker's working now, so that's a globe, so we need one brake stop. Number plate light, huh? How do you get that out? Just like that, that's how. That looks like it's been to hell and back. Oh. Yep, well it's just a globe because that's just hanging out of there. I'll have to take that green because it's a bit funky, although I might have one of them. So I didn't have the most common of bulb. I had one of those random little figures. Let's see if it's power or if it's just a globe. We'll give that a clean and see if it's got power. There's definitely power there. Of course I just put the battery in and now that just started working. I was just about to complain and bitch and moan about having just put the battery in, now got to take it out to get to the back of the light. Took the cover off and it's working. I had no parker. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's great. That light's definitely seen better days, but both parkers work. So now everything works up the front. So we're only a couple of bulbs here. I might check, I'm pretty sure your brake lights are going to be on a separate fuse. So first point of call, I'd check the fuse box. I've still got the lights on. Need a light. Sometimes when they blow a bulb, they'll blow that fuse as well. Let's try and read this fuse box, see what this is telling me. Yeah. I love it when they're nice and easy like that. Although that doesn't mean they'll work, but that's clearly burnt, so well, that'll probably pull me up today. It's well past gear time, I'll tell you that. And really we're only down to a couple of globes. Don't worry about the cracked lens, I'll get to that. But really, to get all the electrics running, it's a couple of globes, a fuse, and that's it. Wiper blades, and grommets. I need boot grommets because the floor was missing a few, and when I wanted to put the carpet back in, I stole them from the boot. So we need some grommets, so then I can paint in the boot. So boot grommets. So we've got bulbs and wiring. I'll get to tomorrow morning. First thing we'll get bulbs. Not a lot. We don't have a lot at all. we're getting there. But anyhow, good day as far as progress. I can actually tomorrow put the rear back together. I'm going to keep those cut rear springs. I'm not going to buy new ones. They can go back in tomorrow. We can button up the rear end, so that's completely done. We're getting close. If I can get those 3 things done tomorrow, which won't be hard, it's not a big job. Rear end, boot, wiring, we're literally waiting on front springs and shocks. But that's okay, it might actually work well because I've got to go back to work for a couple of days and that'll give time for the springs to turn up, so this might actually work right. I've never said going back to work will work okay ever, but time wise it might actually work okay. Anyhow, that's probably it for today. I'll see you in the morning. So into it early this morning and we've got the fuse replaced and the bulbs in the back, so we've got all the lights working. And there wasn't much to that. Cleaned a couple of contacts, chucked the bulbs in and everything came good. And like I said, I did have to go back to work, but that does mean it's 3 days later. We've got springs. And the last couple of days after work, I did sneak down and get a little bit done. The rear springs, they're the cut ones. I didn't buy new ones. They are actually back in. And new shocks and sway bars done up. So we're actually finished under the back here. So we're literally just onto our struts and shocks. And these were just the cheapest shocks I could get. But I'm not going to complain. Turned up in 3 days. Ordered them Tuesday, turned up Friday afternoon. So ordered them Tuesday night, turned up Friday afternoon. It's now Saturday morning. Let's get them in. These are actually shorter than the factory springs that I cut off, but obviously with a heavier spring rate, and they're actually progressive too. They're a bigger coil at the bottom than the top. I was sort of hoping they'd be short enough to fit under the guard, but anyway, we'll get it all back together, compress them down. I'm just going to position him under the strut tower and let it off like that. And that's only releasing the shock, that's not releasing the springs. The compressors have still got the weight of the springs, but we're going to let them off gently as well, so that the strut extends up into the strut tower. Very slow. And this is why I don't like spring compressors. Check this out. Look at this. So just in the time that it's taken me to maneuver that in there, look at that. That's almost off. It's still got the other one holding on, so I'm not that concerned. But that's when you're not watching and it works its way off. So you see up there, we've just got to get that guy to position into that tower up here, and like I said, there's a locator hole in the top pad there, so you can't really mess this up. So I'm just going to push that guy over, let him expand and bring him up into that top. That's why no one likes spring compressors. No one. If a spring compressor had a mother, even that mother wouldn't like that spring compressor. Fortunately, you turn it that way, so it's going to want to push that back on, so it shouldn't be an issue. Just let him off, Michael, stop talking. worked his way back on because I'm trying to twist it that direction. This will be tricky. I'm gonna lift it with my knee and try and reach him up there. Come on, it's getting heavy. Come on. Oh. You know when you're holding something with your leg and your leg starts to shake, did I just put 2 washers on that somehow? Nope, means I've lost one. Where did I drop? There he is. The leg had the shakes going. I'll stretch that one up and that'll bring him up. So I'll do that sway bar up, wheel on. I think up front he's done. Look at that sway bar. Alright, put the wheel on. So that's got to be about it, right? Nah, I don't reckon. I don't think I'm 100% happy with this boiled linseed. Don't get me wrong. If you had a rat rod or a hot rod and you're happy to wash it, boiled linseed it, take it for the drive or whatever, whack him back in the shed, it'll be fine. It'll be just fine. Actually, I like the way it looks. But that's not how this car's getting used. I boiled linseed it for the original video and that was about 4 weeks ago. I've actually done it a second time since because it spent the whole time outside. So it got rained on, dew, dry days. We've got a dirt driveway and so I'm finding it's really dulling off quick. If you see, it's really dulled off. It doesn't have that gloss that it had. Even down the sides. And sure, a lot of it's got to do with the dust we've got on our driveway. But I wanted that to stay somewhat glossy and really show the colour, and it's not happening. So I'm going to go back the other way. We're going to sand the boot, the roof and the bonnet, and some patches on the quarter there too, top of the door there, and just do them in 2K clear coat so they've got a permanent gloss. And then I'm going to buff up the sides again and actually polish the hell out of the sides and see if we can't get a more permanent shine. So she's all sanded down and washed up. And how I'm going to approach the bits on top of the door here is I've Scotch-Brited down to about here and right out to the end of the rust, and I'm going to blow some clear through that area, and then just reduce the dry edge of the clear. I didn't wash there very well, but I'll show you that as we go. And I actually went a little bit coarser on the bonnet and the boot because it was a little bit rougher than I thought. I ended up doing it with 400, and you can still see old sanding marks from when the bonnet was originally repaired and painted, but that's all right. The hail damage dots on the roof, and he's still got plenty of colour. I just whizzed that down with a 400 dry on the whizzer, and again across the back just sanded with 400. And I'll still go by what I originally said, is this isn't going to clear up that well. This is way too cracked to really last forever clear coated, but I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to reduce the clear coat fairly thin and just hope that it gets right down into those cracks and just seals him up. Anyway, we'll start masking him up. I've already blew him down with an air gun just around all the windscreen edges, just to get the water out. Then I'm going to go around, mask it all up. We'll go around it with the air gun again, and then just get stuck into the clear. So we're all masked up. Well, kinda. I've gone as quick as I can through this because the wind is starting to pick up. But these funky little bits that I've masked in, I'll go through that a little bit closer when I get there. But essentially I've used folded back tape, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. It's called soft edge masking, and essentially all you do is grab your tape like that, put it over your knee or whichever, and just fold over 1/3 of it and pull him through like that. So that gives you a folded section you can see in one edge, and when you stick that to the panel, the air flaps that bit down and leaves a soft edge rather than a hard edge. I did use that back in the XE sedan video just to hide a color change, but we're doing it here on that body line. We're going to lose our edge of our clear coat. But anyway, I'll show you the other bit. And on these sections, I'm essentially using the same technique on a bigger scale. I've folded the paper back, and I'm going to clear coat across down to here, but I'm going to try and keep the clear away for that, so it's just the dry spray or just the dry edge of the clear coat. That's Scotch Brighted, as you can see, and then I'm just going to wet in the dry edge with just reducer, no clear coat. My masking's already starting to fall apart in this wind, and that way I can get this section gloss, and hopefully we'll lose the clear coat into this edge, and then we're going to buff up into the rest, so hopefully it'll be shiny into the clear coat and you won't even notice a change. I'll probably cock it up, but I'll have a crack at it. Haven't done it in a long time. And same with there, I'm going to do exactly the same. Keep the clear away from this edge, just try and pull it up here, turn your pressure right down, your fan into narrow, and just cover it with clear coat, and then just wet it in with thinners. My masking is really falling apart already. Now, I literally bought the cheapest clear coat I could find on the internet. It's a 3-to-1 2K clear coat called Euro Flash. I got it because it said flash, and that's how I want it to come out. Flash. No, I want it to harden quickly. So hopefully that's the case when they say flash. So we're going to use, it's a 3-to-1. Or should I just use it all? Harden it all? No, I've got a little bit left. So the measuring stick's just got lines up it with numbers. You just work it out off that. And I'm just going to reduce it down a little bit too, just so it really gets into those cracks. I'm going to use 10% reducer, which is essentially that much. And I'm just going to run around with the tack rag. And all the tack rag's going to do, well, probably don't even need to do this, it's a rat rod, but anyway, just gets the fine bits of lint off. And I'll just hit it with some compressed air as well. Right, we'll step into it. And I'm going to start on the roof and work my way down. On this sort of thing, probably doesn't matter. But if you're trying to paint something that you really wanted a decent finish off, if you do the lower panels first, then come to the top, all your dry spray is landing at the end of each run. It's landing on your boot and your bonnet. So you really want to start at the top and work down. And generally start from one edge, move to the center, grab your edge from that side and keep going. It's called carrying your wet edge. So you're trying to keep your wet edge going this way. If you start in the center, come to here, by the time you get to here, maybe a little bit dry in the middle, and then you're starting on a dry edge and going. So we're starting in this edge, we're going that way. I'm going to forget about this bit for the minute, and I'll show you why in a second. I'm going to do the same to the boot, but I'm actually going to stay away from this section. We got the markers. One thing to remember, try and get nice and square to your panel, not tilted like that, just to get an even fan. Let's move on to these blends. Okay, so you can hear me, I ditched the mask. So what I'm going to do now is turn my pressure right down, and I've cleared to there, so I'm just going to come down ever so gently. And just cover the rust. That's it. Don't try and paint right down it. Next coat I'll do the same. I'll come a fraction further, and then I'm just going to put reducer only, no clear, just reducer into that edge, and hopefully we'll be able to buff the gloss from here and it'll blend into that gloss there. Do the same up here. And so far the verdict on does boiled linseed affect if you want to paint over it later? The answer so far is no. There's no fish eyes. That's what I expected actually, was fish eyes and contaminants like that. More or less trying to paint over silicon. You can see there's speckles in that, that's just because it's so dry. In actual fact, and I'll test on my wiper, that's touch dry. Ooh. Yep, that's almost touch dry now. It said flash, I assume it means Euro flash off fast, and you can see it's very light, that first coat. So if there was any chance of contaminants, it's pretty much sealing them up without giving them a chance to grow legs, so to speak. And you can see all the crazing and cracking in that. Hopefully with that second coat it'll flow out and go into a bit of that cracking. We'll see. I'll give that another couple of minutes and we'll go again. Let's talk briefly about overspray. Everyone talks about 2 packs and overspray, and let's face it, that's most of the reason we use it in a spray booth. But I've used these really fast drying 2 packs before, and there's a bug there, but that just proves what I'm about to say. Think of an acrylic. When you paint something, you're still doing the same, it's still paint in the air, but it dries that fast. If it floats over to a neighbouring car, which is the issue here, if it settles on that car, it settles as dust. Normal 2 packs take a little while to dry, so they'll go over there in the air, settle, then harden, and that's where you get your overspray that covers everything. What I just did there, that's how fast this guy dries. It is, I can literally touch that. I'll come over there, it's not even leaving a fingerprint. That's how quick that's dried. Mind you, it is 35 bloody degrees, but anyway, let's keep going. Second coat. Now that doesn't mean overspray doesn't exist with fast drying 2 packs. It just means I don't have to worry about my Valiant over there getting overspray all over it. We don't want overspray on the Valiant, do we? Okay, so here we go on our blends. This one was double back masked, and as you see, I've just pulled that down to try and make sure there doesn't end up with a hard edge along there. And if you look along that way, you'll see what I mean. It's just left a fuzzy edge there. I'm not going to touch that. I'm now going to buff tomorrow, buff this up and buff into that edge, and hopefully I'll be able to lose the gloss together. But that just got that bit of rust on top of there and up here into the roof. But here's where I'm probably going to make a dick of myself, because I haven't done this in a long time. But you see, you can actually distinctly see where the clear goes to. If I can get that sunlight, see, it looks a bit dry there, and down here, and then down to there. So that's clear coated to there. So if I pull that down, you'll notice there's no clear coat down here, like that. Now I'll try and keep my shadow out of the way, but being just thin as this could run down the panel like no man's business, but anyway, we'll have a go. I'll give that one more go in a second. I'll just see if I can. The funny thing will be, I won't know if that's worked or not till tomorrow when we start to buff back into it. If it rips off a sharp edge, you'll know it didn't work. So again, if I can get that sunshine, you can just see it's starting to lose that real dry fuzzy edge. So hopefully now I can buff this section back into that, and we'll just lose that and it'll all look just one glossy panel. So while we're waiting for that to dry, because we won't finish here, I won't keep you in suspense. We'll get that unmasked and just have a look at it without all the masking that on it. It's probably a good time to talk a little bit about paintwork. In an episode coming soon, we've got a complete repair and paint in acrylic. That'll be a bonnet and 2 guards. Maybe, definitely a bonnet, but maybe the guards as well. I haven't actually looked at the car yet. And we've also got some patina matching in acrylic coming up, so do stick around if you want to do a bit more paintwork. Hit the buttons, hang about. We'll give this another 10 minutes and we'll start unmasking. So I think I got what I want now. That's going to be a bit more hard wearing for just daily use without having to re-wash, re-boiled linseed it. It come up pretty good. And I can't wait to put 60 litres of fuel or something in it just to weigh that back down a little bit more. I reckon another 5-10 mil out of that back end would have been great, but either that or the front up another 5 or 10 just to level it out. But I'm not going to complain, it looks pretty good the way it is. And doing that paintwork, I think it's given me a bit of an idea for tomorrow. We're going to do a little bit more on the tops of the doors. I think we're going to black the tops of the doors. I'll stew on it tonight, but I think it'll match the molds and maybe the darker wheels. Yes, that's right, because this is all about appearances, but it's just something I want to try. And then of course we'll check if my blends worked okay. Like I said, I haven't done that in a long time, so I'll probably mess that up, but I'm just going to creep up on it with the buff. Anyway, that will probably do for now. I'll see you in the morning. So first up this morning, before it gets too hot so it can dry for the rest of the day, I'm going to do a really substandard masking job and black the tops of the doors. In actual fact, if I didn't just put new Bailey channels in it, I probably wouldn't mask anything. But anyway, we'll keep going. I'll just run some tape around the glass and black it. So I've just gone around and give him a quick scuff with some 400 dry. I'm just going to mask off the absolute essentials. Like I said, you're in for a treat. I wouldn't mask anything if I didn't just put new rubbers on it and Bailey channels. From what they were, a bit of black paint would have been probably better. I lied, I didn't rub that bit. Where's my paper? Just using that so I don't have to cover everything else, you know, the seats and that. Yep. Got to shine my mirror. I'm going to start with my blends. I may as well get the misery and despair out of the way first and completely cock it up and get that over and done with. So, and like I said yesterday, we're just going to ever so slightly creep up on this, just really gently, and that's just buffing compound and water. Creeping up on it, doing 80. I think my lifter tick has gone away now, which doesn't surprise me. It's the first time it's probably got decent oil pressure for a long period of time. It's starting to get some heat into it. my speedos out a little bit because I'm sticking with traffic, and this is a 60 zone and I'm reading 55. So maybe when I was doing 80 or 90, I was actually probably doing the speed limit. Anyway. Seem fine. Probably need to say that 3 times. Why? I don't know why. You just do. It's just sanding. That wind has now got me, hasn't it? Painting's very thirsty work. You'd think I'd be getting better at this, wouldn't you? I think would look good on this car. Piss off fly, seriously. We're going to get lots of them in summer. I'm not looking forward to it. Did I say 245? 255? I don't know. Well, that's it for another one. I do appreciate you hanging in there till the end. I know they can get pretty long. But as I say in the video, do stick around. We've got some paintwork coming up, like real paintwork, not patina and rust. And also a couple of new cars. So till then, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.